Who's laughing now? Huh? I'll tell you who's laughing now. It's the Montreal Canadiens, because yesterday, the Habs defeated the Carolina Hurricanes in a slobber knocker of a hockey game. 5-2 victory at the Bell Center for Montreal, including some pretty notable goals from some pretty notable folks. Caulfield, Slavkovsky, Demidov, each with a goal and an assist. What a night it was for the Montreal Canadiens. But what a night it also was for Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Because, I don't know if y'all noticed, but yesterday, Kotkaniemi was not noticeable in the Habs and Canes showdown. Why was that? Why was that? It's because Jesperi Kotkaniemi yesterday was healthy scratched. And I wanted to go over the entire tragic story of this guy in 2026 because it bears repeating just how embarrassing the entire situation looks now for Carolina. This was posted on the Habs subreddit after Montreal's victory over the Hurricanes. We beat the Canes while Kotkaniemi was a healthy scratch. How's that for the undisputed offer sheet champions? Now, I know I'm poking fun at the entire situation here, but Jesperi Kotkaniemi, this ain't the first time the guy's gotten healthy scratched. He's missed a lot of time this season, partly due to injuries, partly due to the fact that he just doesn't play all the time. But Jesperi Kotkaniemi is 25 years old, 6'2", 212, left-handed center, drafted by Montreal in the 3rd overall spot in 2018. He's making $4.82 million a year till the end of 2030. That's a lot of money, man. And that's a lot of years. A guy who is 25, obviously, he still has room to get better and to grow and to become a much better version of himself, so I'm not going to discredit the idea that Jesperi Kotkaniemi can improve over the next however many years the contract goes for, but the fact that he has declined to what he is today, that's the sad part. Because Jesperi Kotkaniemi back in 2018 was seen as a guy that could potentially challenge for a top-of-the-line draft position, even though he was ranked to go somewhere in the top 10 by some outlets, top 15 by others. Jesperi Kotkaniemi ended up going 3rd overall because Montreal desperately needed a center. We made videos back in the day whether or not Filip Zadina, the projected 3rd overall pick, could actually slip, maybe even as far down to number 7 where the Vancouver Canucks were picking. It was a pretty trying time in the channel's history, and I actually want to go out there and check it out for ourselves. But Jesperi Kotkaniemi going 3rd overall to Montreal was seen as a very big desperation move because the Habs at the time, they needed centers. That was the issue with the team. They had all these guys on the wing, they had guys on defense, but aside Ryan Poehling and Nick Suzuki, there was an element of, hey, this team actually does need to get some centers. Let's go out there and try to take one 3rd overall, even though that really wasn't the move back in the day. If you go back over to the videos that we made, here you go. We had this video 7 years ago. Who will the Canadiens draft in 2018's NHL Draft? Zadina, Kotkaniemi, or Hughes? It was an easy discussion back in the day because Montreal had the 3rd overall pick, and the projected 3rd was supposed to be Zadina. That was the easy choice. But they ended up grabbing Kotkaniemi, much to the delight of the folks making all the speculation. Zadina ended up dropping all the way to the 6th overall spot where he was snagged up by Detroit, and the rest is history. Kotkaniemi made the NHL right away in his first season, 34 points in 79 games played for the Montreal Canadiens. He had outscored Alexander Barkov as an 18-year-old in the NHL, and Kotkaniemi was the very first athlete born in the 2000s to play in either the NHL, NBA, NFL, or MLB. Big trivia fact right there, he was the very first one. But unfortunately, his rookie season was essentially the best season he had in Montreal, as the Habs ended up sending him back over to Finland, and he played a little bit over there. There was some optimism in the 2021 Cup run when Kotkaniemi scored a beautiful goal to give Montreal a much-needed victory over, I think it was Toronto. But Kotkaniemi, with 8 points in 19 playoff games, needed a contract in that 2021 offseason. And the Carolina Hurricanes, still upset over Montreal's offer sheeting of Sebastian Aho earlier in the 2020s, decided to take their swing and decided to give this guy a one-year deal worth $6 million a year. It was a really beefy contract, and obviously it was one of these things where Montreal did not want to match it. They didn't want to pay the guy that much. So he ended up going to Carolina. He had a pretty okay year, 29 points, and then he had signed the extension that he got, which looked really fine right away, honestly. $4.82 million a year for a guy who at the time was 22 years old, and then he went out there and posted up 43 points in 82 games. That's not bad. But over the next few years, things just didn't really hold themselves up consistency-wise. He started producing less, he started being used less, he started getting tossed down the lineup. He was a fourth-line guy, he's a healthy scratch guy, and now, for a player that at one point people were comparing to Alexander Barkov, seeing him get this treatment in Carolina, and seeing them waste all this money on a guy who isn't even playing half the time, it is quite the tragedy for a guy that stole a third overall spot in the NHL Draft. We had mentioned this in multiple videos over the years, but it's kind of funny how Montreal always finds themselves a relationship with these third overall guys. Third overall, second overall dudes, from Patrick Laine to Pierre-Luc Dubois, to Jesperi Kotkaniemi, to Jonathan Drouin, and all these other names that have tossed themselves into the mix. And then, of course, I guess you could say Juraj Slafkovsky, the first overall pick a few years later. But with all that said, having Jesperi Kotkaniemi as a healthy scratch while the Montreal Canadiens were destroying Carolina, obviously there's a big level of poetic justice there, and I think just acknowledging the level of future that we are seeing with this Canadiens roster. Oliver Kapanen scored, Slafkovsky, Demidov, Caulfield had 2 points each, Nick Suzuki continued his point streak. It's a really nice time to acknowledge the future as well as what was the past for the Montreal Canadiens. Let's just go out there and read some of the comments on this Habs thread on Reddit, just to give us a little bit of a kick. Undisputed offer sheet champions. Yeah, it's pretty cringe. That was their entire thing on social media. Incredibly cringe. I'll never forget the smugness and arrogance from Carolina. Literally pulled the pin on the grenade. They attempted to throw it at us, laughed, and had it blow up in their faces. Hilarious. And they also doubled down by signing Kotkaniemi long-term, LMAO. Just to clarify, he has been a healthy scratch since the Olympics. If I recall correctly, he is the only Finnish NHLer who didn't make their Olympic team. Is that true? What in the world? What? Oh my gosh, he is the only guy who didn't make the team? That's crazy. To make it sting more, there was a non-NHLer on that team. Different position, but a skater nevertheless. So, yeah, nah. Okay, Ratu, him and Laine. Laine was chosen, but was injured. Kotkaniemi was just omitted completely. Okay, Ratu didn't make the team, though. Although, the fact that he was in the AHL for a good chunk, I guess you can say that he wasn't an NHLer purely. I don't know. Overall, though, the Kotkaniemi situation definitely is not aging well for Carolina, and just looking at where this team is right now, they got some problems in net, as demonstrated by yesterday's Montreal victory. I don't know if y'all had seen, but Jakub Dobeš absolutely stood on his head against the Carolina Hurricanes. Meanwhile, the Montreal Canadiens were able to get 5 goals on just 19 shots. Freddie Anderson, what are you doing, buddy? There could have been a lot of extra money available for Carolina had they just not made that stupid contract offer to Jesperi Kotkaniemi, just trying to get back at Montreal for the Aho thing. But with all that said, the tragedy of Kotkaniemi is going to continue for many years to come as the guy continues his NHL career. Hopefully he gets to a point where he can justify the money, but it doesn't look like it at this point. Never mind the fact that he is never going to live up to the Barkov-esque expectations that we had seen out of him back in 2018-19. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the Jesperi Kotkaniemi situation, him getting healthy scratched all these games in a row? I hope you enjoyed this British 99, and bye.